So now it's my pleasure to welcome Paul Cunningham, Craig DOE, Craig Jesk of GTRI, Wayne Jones of NNSA, Rick Meller of Lockheed Martin, and Chris Dorbeck to the stage to look at the future of the cyber operational landscape.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Pete, for doing that. I really like doing this. This is a great room, isn't it? Though it feels a little bit like a stand-up. We should be doing stand-up, right? Knock, knock, who's there? Oh, no, they tried that earlier this weekend. Yeah, that didn't go well. We are going to talk about how cool is this, the future of cybersecurity, and look at these bright, bushy-eyed, just ready to tell us what's going to happen in the world. You heard all their names, but let me reintroduce them. Paul Cunningham is a Deputy Associate Chief Information Officer for Cybersecurity. Craig, how do you say your last name?
Jeske.
Jesse is the Business Development Manager for Cloud Computing for Global Technology Resources Incorporated. Wayne Jones is the Deputy Associate Administrator for Information Management and Deputy Chief Information Officer for the National Nuclear Security Administration. And Rick Meller is Director of Energy and Cyber Services for Lockheed Martin. Paul, we're going to start with you. Cybersecurity, what's the big thing what keeps you up at night? What's top on your agenda? What do you worry about? What do you want these people to know?
Well, I think as we're moving forward with cybersecurity, we're in a major shift where we're going to have to be a lot more accountable for the money that we're spending. We just can't keep layering tools on top of each other and just keep a long tail. So we have to have more agile, a more refined approach to the tools that we get in our approach. So as we go forward, we're having to tie more and more what we buy and how we use it to the actual business cases that we're going to have to go out and ask for funding from CFO and make those risk decisions on which tools are the right size tools for the mission that we have.
So talk a little bit about risk. Are we getting better at assessing risk? It's been sort of we talk about it a lot, but we haven't seemed to be particularly good at it.
Well, I think it goes back to risk management isn't just, hey, this is what I've done before, and I'm just going to take the risk management principles from NIST, and I was going to put it in my vernacular, my lexicon, and just add it down to the piece of paper. It's really kind of embracing the mental shift of accountability at the right level, decisions being made at the right level, and looking at what do I gain, what I potentially lose, and from there make that proper risk decision. I think it's gotten a lot better. I know that Pete's taken that on board, and Bob Breeze has that in his line as well. So.
One of the things that I hear from a lot of people who are chief information security officers is that part of the big challenge with risk is having you folks at the table when they're talking about plans, and oftentimes people don't want you there because you just say no. How do you get over that? How do you help them do their jobs better?
Well, I think the earlier they bring us in is actually better. We want to get in early and give the yes and. Yes, we can do this, but we also have to add these additional security requirements in there. So we do want to change that mindset that security says our motto is no longer we're not happy until you're not happy, but actually move it to what can we do to help the product be better and give better services out to the field.
Talk a little bit about, because I know Energy Department, like many agencies, it's a large organization. There are many different parts of it. What's your role with all of those people, and how do you all work together to make sure that you're somewhat on the same page?
Well, the department, first you got to recognize that everybody has different missions, a different mission set and issues. If you're just going in and bulldozing, it's not going to be very effective, and then you'll be, again, locked out, as you described earlier. But with that, the department has a risk-managed approach that's actually distributed risk management at 205.1b that allows the programs to find the right risk program for themselves that addresses their mission set. Because I know that for nuclear side of the house, their risk appetite is a lot different than the research or the science side of the house. So it's important for us to give them the latitude to make the decisions they need to make to meet their mission, but still meet the security requirement as a whole for the department.
You heard Pete, and I assume that you guys talk a lot. Talk about the transformation initiative and where security fits into that. What does that whole document mean to you guys?
Bob's approach on security and the transformation is really about integrating security operations as not a separate activity, but actually in the development, whether it's software or the programmatics of a new program. So from transformation side, it's really that aha moment that we're trying to get out to the department and to our partners, that security is not something to avoid, but actually bring in early and integrate it. And we want to minimize the lift or the amount of work required, but we got to be in early and find at those specific control points that they're going to do testing anyway. We want to be there to help them refine and do more of a agile or iterative approach into security.
One last question, and then we're going to go to Wayne and make this a little more conversational. But talk a little bit about the Open Government Initiative, because oftentimes, and we've seen this guy who's in Moscow or wherever he is, those kinds of things. All of a sudden, people go, "Oh, sharing information. I don't want to do that." And yet, half of your organization is they're scientists. They're big into sharing, and the other half are people that he deals with. They're trying to keep it all closed in. How do you? That seems like a contradiction in terms. What does open government mean in the Energy Department framework, in the security framework?
Well, again, it goes back to what's the risk tolerance, and if you provide an environment that allows open sharing, in some cases in science, they want to be able to have that open forum across countries that we're not going to be able to look at each person that's going to be getting on that to get to that information. But if it's sequestered off and it's protected, it'll allow a more open forum, but then there's certain things that have to be protected, and I'm sure Wayne will be talking a lot more about that as well, where we have to have that thicker boundary and that firewall put out. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all across the department. We're going to have to look at where our strengths and weaknesses are and put the resources to those areas. And if it's something where it's an open, shared resource, then we can go ahead and share that information out quickly and effectively.
So excited that you used sequester in a term that didn't have to do with budgets. Wayne, talk to us a little bit about, what are your challenges? What are you watching out for these days?
Well, on our side of the house, as you know, we are out front in this IT modernization for the department. So one of the things that we're concerned about from our side of the house is mobility, and bringing in all these different tools and things that we allow people to use. How do we protect those? How do we ensure that the information that we need it protected doesn't get lost? How do I go to a user and allow him to use any device, anywhere, anytime?
You tell them no.
Right. Well, in the old days, I would have told them no. Yeah. Yes.
Those were the good old days.
Those were the good old days when we would say, no, you can't do that. But we can't do that anymore. We have to build an environment where our folks can do their work anywhere, anytime. The younger environment, the younger folks, that's how they grew up. They grew up using all of this stuff, so we have to embrace it.
We hate those people.
Not really, I got 2 of those at home, so. And they steal me all the time about stuff I won't let them do at home, but that's, those are the people that we're bringing into our work environment every day. So we have to be able to support that group of folks. And one of the most important things from my point of view is these folks here. We need to be able to reach out to these contractors and get the products and deliver products to us that allow us to allow our folks to work anywhere, anytime, in any place. So those are the things that are important to us. Yes, budget is important. I have no control of that. That's somewhere else. So I have to think about the things that I have control of, which is what I put into my environment, what applications am I allowed to work in the environment, how do I determine what product to put in that environment, and I look at the vendors to bring those products to me. We have to do a better job working with our vendors, laying down what our requirements are so they understand what the requirements are. Don't give them a vague requirement. Give them a clear, concise requirement that they need to deliver a product to us for.
So let me pause you for because there are amazing, I happen to be doing a thing on mobile this afternoon, and 91% of the people out there have cell phones now. 91%. And at least in my space, having covered this stuff since the Lincoln administration, the fact that we're talking about something like BYOD shocks the hell out of me. I would have never guessed that those four words would go together in government. This has to be a real challenge in terms of how you secure something like this device in a world where, guess what? This company doesn't care that you're the government. They have a big market and they don't need you. That's a very different place to be in. How do you even start?
So we have to ensure that the back-end devices that we use to get information to that device are secure. So what we don't want to do is just put information out there on those devices without ensuring that it's secure. And the way that we ensure that those back-end products are secure is by working with our vendors. We have to put the right products in place, the right protections in place. And a lot of people say, you know, put all the NIST stuff in. Okay, that's going to help you. Well, okay, that'll help you for about 10%, right? Because there are so many other things out there that we deal with on a daily basis. The advanced persistent threat, they know how to break that stuff in a heartbeat. So we have to depend on our vendors to bring to us the right products at the right time. Also, you remember now, we got some of the smartest people in the world working in our laboratories as well. So we depend on those guys a lot too, to test devices for us, to break into them, to let us know what the weaknesses are. And then we can't overlook those weaknesses. We have to plan around them, make sure that the things that we put in place work. We also have to make sure that the data that we put out on those devices is the data that we don't really care about getting lost or not. Okay.
How do you deal with things like, these devices are amazing and they have things like Dropbox, which I know probably gives you an ulcer as you even think about having some sensitive piece of. How do you deal with something like that with the mindset that, guess what, you just can't know isn't an option these days?
Training and education. You have to make sure that you train it. Right. No, it's not training tons of money for that either. Yeah. But you have to make sure. See, one of the mistakes we make in government is this. When we start looking at our budget process, that's why I don't like to think about it too much, the budget process all along. If we start looking at our budget process and we have to cut the budget, where's the first place we cut? Training and education, right? So within the NNSA, we started to take a different viewpoint of that. Maybe that isn't the first place we should cut. Let's look at some of the other things first. Some of the other work that we're doing, duplicate what the CIO office is doing. Maybe we should cut there and not cut in our training and education. We have to make sure that we train our employees. Now, with that said, you have to make sure you get the right training for the employees, and you have to develop the right products to train the employees. But training and education is going to be a key to moving forward into the mobile environment, into any environment that we put in place.
And you do have to have, if you don't use Dropbox or something like it, you have to have some kind of tool that allows them, and this is really people saying, hold on, I have a need for this, help me do it. They'd love to do it in a safe way if they could.
Correct, and you have to be able, that's why I said earlier, we got some of the smartest people in the world working for us too. Those individuals we have to tap into to build those products and to allow us to have those type of drop boxes that will allow us to continue our work.
As I mentioned, Rick Mailer is the Director of Energy and Cyber Services for Lockheed Martin. And by the way, we really, really hope that Lockheed moves in out of the 8A status. Any day now we're hearing something happen.
We're hoping maybe this year. This year.
But talk a little bit, you heard what they said, and you heard Wayne say, basically, we need your help. How do you help them?
I mean, I think it's a couple things. We've looked at kind of our own internal journey and how we've evolved, how we protect Lockheed Martin as the largest defense contractor in the world, obviously very highly targeted, what's worked well for us internally, and a couple things. I mean, everybody jumps to the technology, and since none of my development staff is here, I can say that that's the easiest part. I won't tell them that, right? I mean, they're doing hard work, but it's easier to make the ones and zeros talk together than some of the people and organizations, and you've got to fix that piece right away. Pete mentioned earlier enterprise architecture, right? So you want to look at how did those plans come together? How are you going to tie these together? How do we look at those redundancies? And our kind of roadmap is first we have to know what we have. And it's amazing how many organizations don't know what they have. And if you don't know what you have, you can't protect it. Then it's what are you doing with it and who should have it, right? And then you can start to evolve to what are the protections that we need in place so that it has the ability to meet the mission but still can protect the data. And so we look at those things as well. And then we layer on top of that, now can we know what we have, can we see it at all times? Right? Anytime we have a blind spot, that's an opportunity. So we've had clients across the space that had, phenomenal monitoring, except here. And then, they find out they'll get notifications from government, other sources that they've had an incident, but we're watching everything. Well, you're not watching here, and they came that way, right? I mean, don't put the armed guard at the front door and leave the back door unlocked, those kinds of things. And, we've got a pretty good perspective here, because not only obviously a good partner with the Department of Energy, within my practice, I also have the utility market, the oil and gas clients as well, so I get to see the commercial side of it as well. And some of the same trends and patterns just occur. You've got leaders across, and you've got some laggards, and there's no magic box out there. There's no vendor that can sell you the thing that you plug in and it's going to fix your problem, because the threats evolve every day, and your infrastructure is evolving so fast now that you've got to be able to keep up with what are the threat patterns and what do I have in place, and be able to marry those together to stay ahead of the attacks.
So the biggest challenge for you guys dealing with people like them is what?
I wouldn't say we have a challenge dealing with them. We're a good partner with the Department of Energy.
I understand they're awesome customers and they do great work. But if there are times when you end up in that place where you go, okay, we need to move forward, is it the difficulty of communicating even within energy? So you have a clear message? Is it?
Well, I mean, I think like any very complex organization with a lot of different missions, right, and key priorities is, where do you find the things that are common that can be, improved in one direction, and where do you need kind of the specialty implementations, whether it's a different process, a different technology, identify those, call those out. That ties back to kind of the roadmaps that are going in place, that enterprise architecture approach, the policy approach, the training as well, right? I mean, training is a huge component of it, both for the security staff as well as the general employees. I mean, we've got some metrics on some programs that have cut behavior 50% of bad behavior, right? And the people part is a huge element. So they can either be kind of the biggest risk of that person that's just going to click on something no matter what, or you can train them and change that culture to turn them into another advanced technology for you, where they're reporting in threats for you instead of opening threats for you.
So let me get Rick off the stage here a little bit on that one, on that question. And this is for all of my counterparts that are in government. One of the biggest problems that we have with our vendors is requirements, and giving them a clear requirement, because we're all over the place. I mean, and we need to understand better ourselves and work on this within the government in developing better, clear, concise requirements to deliver to the vendors to deliver that product or service to us. So I help you out there. I think that is one of the things that we could do better, is clean up our requirements a little better, so we can make sure that we're giving you the right requirement that we want you to bring to us.
But with that said, too, I mean, there's a certain amount of leverage that we can get, because large companies or even small companies that are working in other federal spaces see things that they can bring to us and give us, like, hey, we've seen something like this over here. It may not be an exact lift and shift capability, but if we take that kind of concept and help refine, there's a lot of value added in that, and that's why we really do look for our partners to bring that sort of third eye to the problem.
Well, I think that is one of the things we can bring to the table for the government that differentiates Lockheed's and GTRI's. Where I see it in commercial, I see it in enterprise, I see it in federal, DoD, state and local, that you guys don't have the opportunity to, because you're just so singularly focused on the mission at hand that you don't have time to go out and ask someone in the Army or at the Pentagon or across the country at eBay, well, what are you guys doing to solve this problem? And that's our job. That, like you said, that's our value add.
Craig, talk a little. You heard what they said about you, and thank you for jumping in. But so, how do you help them do their jobs better? Is it partially being that eye, but it's oftentimes you get in that situation where, okay, you're having to say, you need to do this, and they're going, well, how do you work those situations?
It's trying to become a partner as opposed to a reseller or an integrator or any of the other good/bad words they call companies like us. And we want to be a partner helping the government, helping our clients actually achieve their goals and achieve their missions. And something that I personally get more fulfillment out of working with, federal government and healthcare and, military and NNSA is, I'm like, we're doing something that actually makes a difference. And when they let us partner, we can be part of the team instead of the enemy that you're just trying to beat down to, get your costs lower, you know, something, not that these folks would do that, that's contracting's job, but sorry if there's contracting in here. Being there to help, and that's what we're trying to do.
Talk a little bit about, because both of you guys see a much wider perspective than just government, and it seems like the threat is evolving a lot and becoming, in a way, much broader. There's so many different bad guys out there, including internally now. We have to panic about that. Give us a threat landscape of what you're seeing out there.
It's a wide landscape. The biggest thing I came back to, when I forget who made the comment earlier, but it's and what Pete said is keeping the right data in and the wrong people out. And back to the NIST guidelines, what's been good enough historically and what the baseline is today is not good enough for tomorrow. And we have to look at emerging technologies, small companies that have really cool products that can take us to that next step. I mean, we were sitting around joking last night, my boss wanted to put me in a shirt that just said PKI is crap. And the reason was, I mean, that's been historically good enough security, but now it's so easy to compromise if you get your hands on data. Whereas I tell somebody, you know, I don't care if your data is encrypted. If they own that data, a million monkeys, a million years, you're gonna, you know, get the works of Shakespeare. If they have the data and they have the time, they own your data, whether it's encrypted when they get it or not.
We're tracking roughly 35 discrete adversarial groups, you know, above kind of the broad-based organized crime kinds of stuff, right? So we're tracking them to the point where they're attributed to every incident that we see. So whether it's one of our clients or us or our peers in the defense community or peers in government, we run what we call a heat map where, you know, month by month, year by year across those campaigns, we can see how many incidents hit each one. We can do a lot of analytics on that. We can get predictive to say, you know, this period of the year is always really busy for us. These groups always come in and hit this, and then they jump to here. So we've seen it jump, and we can map these from, you know, these ones are active not just in the defense and government space, but also in banking, also in utilities, also in oil and gas companies, and kind of what they're after. They may get some different targets, but they're going to use the same methods. So by doing that, we can get ahead of them. We can actually, I mean, we use that as our approach. We don't kind of run on our own calendar. We run on their calendars. And obviously some of them have different calendars and different languages and different time zones, and use all of that knowledge about them to our advantage instead of theirs, so that every time they come after us, every time we get a block, we're gaining more intelligence. And for us, it really is an intelligence problem, and that's kind of the way that we look at it, is a cyber intelligence approach, the point where we can say, well, we should be seeing these guys right now, right? They always hit us right now. Why are we not? And you know, that paranoia of security is, we've got to be missing something, right? No, they're not doing something because, and you do the deeper analysis and find out where, or they've migrated over here. I mean, there's a great example where there's a group that came after us every month for years, and then they just stopped. We didn't see them again, and thought maybe one of our other government friends did something about it, and got called out last year to a commercial company and found this group. And when we looked at the images that we pulled off, our guys immediately like, that's exactly, you know, the October '09 variant of what we used to see with these guys. We just haven't seen it in 4 years ourselves. So, I mean, they evolve, they get different tasking, but you need that level of approach over and above your kind of COTS running the, you know, basic blocking and tackling kinds of things. Because without knowing, you know, it's like, it's the same kind of thing as business. If you don't know what your competitors are doing, you're not sure your strategy's on par, right? So you've got to know what your adversaries are after to know that you've got the right approach to protecting what you need to protect.
And one of the amazing developments is you guys are as much targets as they are almost these days. Talk a little bit about how you deal with, Wayne was talking about mobile, and it does feel like mobile creates a whole new realm of things to worry about.
Well, if it was easy, it would have been done by now, first of all. So, but I think as Wayne's talked about, the need for it, or the push for it, is definitely on the increase, and we have to recognize that before we just jump in the deep end, we got to do it smart and in a deliberate approach. Because once we're in, it's going to be very difficult to swim back to shore. So there's a very deliberate approach. We're looking at technologies, not only for what they can do today, but what they can do tomorrow, and where can we put two technologies together and get a better product than the two combined, you know, operating by themselves. So we haven't quite found that magical key yet, and if you have it, you know, give it to us. But until we get that solved and we can get the risk down to an acceptable level, going back to the risk management approach of, what's our risk and can we get it down and get it mitigated to a point that we can accept it, and what's the residual risk after that point, we just can't really move off the mark yet.
Wayne, does this just eventually become something that is going to happen, and so you need to learn to figure out that risk approach, or is this something that you're going to be going, hold on, we have to wait, we have to drag our feet until we get the solutions out there?
Well, I think the dragging the feet part is over. We won't be able to drag our feet and just wait. We have to come up with solutions that would allow us to implement these devices in our environments. As I said before, we're bringing in younger folks, which we need to do, from the NNSA point of view especially. If you look at our demographics, you'll see that in the 10 to 15 year period, most of our folks will be retired. So we are starting to work with the younger group. So we have to bring them in. We have to work not only with the CIO's office, but our partners from the vendor side of the house as well, to make sure that we put the right products and services in place, and the protections in place to protect these devices as we move forward. We've been lucky over the last year and a half to have both Travis and O'Neill working on our team to bring in some of those ideas and bring in and working with the right people to think about some of those problems and putting some of those things in place. I think NNSA is may not be the leader out there, and I hope we're not, but we are, I would say, positioned well in this environment. Now we will find out as we move forward over the next 8 months and start putting some of these products in place, bringing on some of the things that we've been working on with OCIO over the last 2 years. So we will see.
I want to talk to them, but before we do that, in the next panel, we're going to be talking a lot about cloud. Talk about cloud from a security standpoint. Is this
Terrifying.
terrifying? Go ahead.
I mean, in one word, it's terrifying. It's trying to make that decision of everybody's wants to do it. They all want to go to public cloud, and it's whether or not that's a good idea. It's deciding which data can and which data can't. Which data should be run out of headquarters, and some of the one NSA stuff that's going on around maybe putting a little bit of an internally hosted or internally managed cloud as opposed to going up to the Amazons and the Azures and the people up in the public cloud. And once the data's there, how do you protect it? I did a write-up a couple weeks ago, and don't get married to your cloud provider without a prenup agreement. And part of that's true, because what happens if your data sits on a shelf of disks somewhere in California, it's in the US, but you're on a shared set of disks, and somebody comes in and says, the FBI's taking that shelf, and you find out, oh, my data's offline because what? They took my data? Well, when's it gonna come back on? I own that data, and all of these contractual issues that we start to run into, and you're gonna get a call to the help desk going, this app's not working, and you're gonna go, well, I'm sorry, that's publicly hosted, and how do you broker that discussion back to the cloud provider, and where is your management in this entire stack of publicly hosted cloud that you don't have control over? And that scares the crap out of me.
He's a control freak. Do you share the control issues?
Well, I think, again, the requirement to protect data is there, whether it's on the cloud or on the box. So we can't get away from that element. And while we can say technically its capability to provide cloud services are there, and as we look to see in the future what a great advantage that is, we can't ignore the very fact that we have to protect that data. And until we get that done, until we can show that we not only show how this cloud service will work, but what are we going to do if there's an event occurs, and how do we do the cleanup on that? And again, that's going to become the long pole in this tent very quickly if it's not already there. And we'll start talking more and more about that, not about what a great idea cloud computing is from an access point of view.
So at least my sense is folks are less and less talking about the security stuff of cloud, and instead figuring out, okay, how are we going to secure? We are going into the cloud. How are we going to do it? What's the strategy?
Well, I think we go back to the requirements, and we say, how are you going to do this? And as you said, what's your service level agreement? For instance, PII. You know, if that gets exposed, you know, it runs about $200 per person to provide just the credit monitoring, not even just a cleanup. So who's going to pay for that? And you know, if I have a vendor that says, look, you guys blew it, it's your fault, you guys, you know, 10,000 names on the street, who's going to pay that from DOE, or is it going to be a vendor, or is it going to be a shared expense? And that's just one element of many elements in the cloud computing. So it's going to take both the vendors and partnerships with the companies that we have and DOE and the federal government as a whole to come up with a strategy that mitigates the risk, transfers it or, you know, to an acceptable level. But we can't ignore it. That's the one thing you can't do with risk, is ignore it.
Wayne?
Cloud. So yeah, we're going there. Well, I don't think we're not. We have started down that road. So yeah, I think all of government at some point is going to go there. But the question is, what are you going to do with cloud? I mean, what type of cloud are you going to put into action for your organization? Is it going to be a public cloud? Is it going to be a private cloud? Is it going to be some type of combination? Within the NSA, we're looking at the combination role. I mean, we know that there are things, part of NSA that's unclassified but sensitive that will be in what we're calling our private cloud. Maybe there are some things that we can look at putting out in a public part of the cloud that will help us decrease our costs. But we have to do an evaluation of all of that. And it takes the government side of the house to do that evaluation. So we're going to have to get smarter about it ourselves. What information are we going to allow to be out in the public cloud, and what information we're going to put in the private cloud, or the combination. But as Paul had said, the key is security up front. We have to think about it not at the end, but when we start the process. How do we put security in place to ensure that we get what we need at the end when we implement this cloud environment? As I said before, I think that both DOE and NSA with Travis, Anil, Pete, as part of that team, has done a pretty good job of looking at that for us. Just yesterday, Travis brought some documentation to me that I reviewed and looked at. I thought was pretty good. We now are in the testing phase at one of our locations, and we'll be moving into a pilot environment within the next month to take a real look at how we're doing this. That's going to tell us how good we're doing. And it's also going to give us some opportunity to make some changes as we go through the process. So I guess the biggest thing for me is that ensure that we don't jump in feet first and drown as we're trying to get through this process.
I hear a lot of folks saying, hold on, CIA's looking at using Amazon Web Services. If CIA's using it, then it must be okay for us.
Well, I think you have to sit and talk with the CIA folks when you hear that kind of story, right? Right. And if you have a discussion with them, you will find out that that CIA, what's called sensitive data, isn't part of that cloud discussion. Okay. It's part of this. It's just like the stuff that we're talking about. What do we do with email? Okay. And we have to go all the way back again to my comment about training. We have to train people what to put in email, what not to put in email. I mean, and we have to understand what data we have that we are responsible for. And we have to make sure that people understand just because I develop something on the unclassified system doesn't also mean that that's just unclassified data. So you have to understand the programs that you're working with and within. And that's not only the Fed, that's the contractors that we bring in-house to help us do these things. We really have to be real careful about and understand what we're putting forward. We have, as I stated before, we have some of the smartest people. We have to use those people. We have to understand what they're putting in front of us, and we also have to understand where we're trying to go in government with this cloud environment. It's not an environment that I believe that we will implement completely across all of government as an open cloud environment. There's going to be hybrid clouds, and we have to determine what part of that hybrid cloud is going to be really unsensitive information that can be used for unclassified environment, and what part is sensitive information that needs to be put in a place. That means that we, the government, need to understand what's on our networks, what type of data we're putting out there. For those of us in the IT field and in the cyber field, we have to work together as we're moving forward, not as two separate units anymore.
seems to get harder and harder to do as we create more and more data, and people don't know what they have.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's putting other systems in place along with the training and the policies in order to stop well-intentioned people from putting the wrong data or providing access to the data for certain people, because I always go back to relating it to something. I'm sure it was a very well-intentioned person that let the Trojan horse in through the gates, and that didn't turn out well.
You want to talk cloud at all, and then I'll get some insights from.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said earlier, the big difference between the public and the private, right? You can take some of those cost savings, some of that consolidation, even in sensitive environments, and bring it inside and do it in a private environment where it is controlled, right? But all the same best practices that you've developed over the years have to be applied to this different contracting and this different technology area. So disaster recovery, service level agreements, backup and continuity, all those kinds of things. It's the same trade space, just reapplied, right? We've gone through these major upheavals. We'll continue to do it every 5 or 7 years in technology, right? From mainframe to client server to web applications to cloud. And in 5 years from now, there'll be the next buzzword over the next technology evolution that none of us know what it is right now, but we're still going to be talking about the same issues of how do we secure it and still provide access and still provide continuity of operations.
Questions? Is there somebody over
Right behind the pole.
there? I can't see behind the pole. I'm good, but not that good.
We're that good.
Marty Lynch, Oracle's National Security Group. Just wondering, you mentioned some, well, I'd like to ask, what about continuous monitoring? What types of tools are you guys using, and what are you doing to prevent insider threat?
There are two questions. Let's
Yeah.
talk about continuous monitoring first, and then
So-
the broader insider threat question.
So we all, especially in the federal government, realize that the old FISMA compliance way is a lot of money being spent for very little additional security, although there needs to be something in there to help us quantify what we're doing in that realm. Continuous monitoring is obviously moved forward. DHS is coming up with their CDM. We're going to be an early implementer of those tools, and we're developing it to meet their requirements as they're defining those. So there is going to be a mental shift of what do we want to do from a continuous monitoring program to build the fidelity of what are we looking at on a more often basis than some of the less secure or less important programs. For instance, if you have a public kiosk, that may need quite a bit of monitoring, because you don't know who's coming in, who's looking at that thing, whereas one that's in a secured room, although hopefully it's not running secure data, would probably need as well as, probably won't need as much or the same type of controls being monitored. But with that said, I think what the Department of Energy is doing is, like JC3, is allowing enterprise approach to share audit information and then the findings across the field. And then that way, if there's an incident happens on one site, we can quickly get that information out to the other sites so they can start looking for those same anomalies that may have or may not, they may or may not have detected. So again, it's kind of leveraging what you have on a more real-time basis than just waiting every 3 years to do the accreditation package.
Anyone else want to talk about continuous monitoring, or I'm going to ask about insider? I'm going to go to the second part, which is insider threats, which, of course, everyone's very keenly aware of the challenges there. Wayne, how do you deal with insider threats? Because these are people you're supposed to trust.
Well, that's a tough question. How do you deal with the insider? There are a number of programs in place within DOE, and because I'm sure most of you know that NNSA does quite a bit of work with the DOD, we have products and services both from DOE and DOD that we have in place within NNSA for insider threat monitoring. I won't get into a lot of those tools because they belong in that other area we don't talk a lot about. But if you work in NNSA, for the most part, you know that you're being monitored, okay? And that we are keeping an eye on the things that you're doing. Not so much on our purely unclassified networks, which we call the green net, but on our unclassified but sensitive in our classified environments, we have the tools in place, and we're using them. They are turned on, and I get reports on them. So.
This is again one of these areas where one would assume NSA has pretty good checks on folks, and yet it happened. I'm certainly not going to ask you to explain what NSA did or did not do, because I think they would be up on the hill a little bit talking about that. But this has to be, I mean, these, as we said, these are people that you trust and you do watch. But this guy was a pretty smart guy. You're dealing with smart people, as you mentioned.
Yes, I mean, I was just out doing an assessment myself at one of my sites, and you know, there's a couple of guys out there who are extremely talented, and if they decided they wanted to go rogue, they could, all right? But it's my job to make sure that we have processes in place and that they understand what those processes are, that if they decide to go down that way, and I'm pretty sure that our side of the house, working with the DOE side as well as within NNSA, in the intelligence community, that we would be able to catch them. They know that. There are programs in place that I won't talk a whole lot about, but that these individuals know they're a part of, and there are things that happen to them on a quarterly basis that don't happen to most people that work within NNSA. But those are the processes we've put in place. We use them. We don't turn them off. We make sure that they are functioning. Let's say if this certain individual, if he doesn't show up in a 6-month period on a list that I've got, that he's gone through this certain process, I'm asking why not, okay?
Let me ask the contractors, because the NSA situation involved a contractor, of course. How do you deal with this so you're protecting your client's information, and how do you deal with the bad people maybe in your own ranks?
We have a similar kind of thing as some of our government customers with an internal program. The interesting part is, you know, again, the technology part of it, of, you know, systems and detections of anomalous behavior and all the algorithms that go into that. The people side is actually the more complex part. Now you're pulling in psychologists and sociologists and tying that to performance appraisals and salary actions and applications for internal jobs that they did or didn't get.
Possibly go wrong.
Exactly. So, but it's a really complex, unique problem of pulling those different viewpoints together, sociology and psychology, and kind of the data analytics and data forensics kinds of people, to get that comprehensive picture of, you know, again, we're trying to get it before, right, not after. So after an event happens, you've got all the alarms that go off, but it's too late. It's who are the at-risk employees that we need to be watching a little extra for whatever the reasons may be.
Well, I was going to say, in some cases, it's easier in a private organization to put advanced levels of monitoring on people and constantly monitor than it is in a government organization where rights are a little more pushed, because as a private organization, we have more of an ability sometimes to say, you're going to do this, this, and this, and I'm going to watch your every single step, or you don't get the job. Whereas you can't always get away with that in the federal space.
Although there's now a bill that would not allow feds to take the fifth. I mean, talk about it. I guess we're going to just move on. Any other questions? Yeah, hold on. Let me get all the way back there. How do I get back there? You're really making me work for it. So, where'd you go?
Dr. Phil.
Oh, hi. Purple shirt. Look at that.
John Harrison from Binary Group. There's a lot of talk about integrating the security engineering process with the AFCEA. I was just wondering, as Binary Group, we've done that some successful with that with multiple clients. It was challenging from the cultural side of it. I'm just wondering at DOE what some of the challenges you came up against, or how are you actually moving forward and doing that?
Government C-word, yes.
Can you repeat integrating the security engineer in the sales process? Is that what you said? You were a little muffled.
Sorry about that. Integrating the security engineering process will allow your software development lifecycle.
Okay.
So at Binary, we've had a lot of success doing
Makes
it,
more
but it was
sense.
a major challenge in convincing a lot of the customers. There's a lot of cultural barriers there. But we had tremendous success, and now it's a best practice and a standard there. I was with some challenges that are coming up across.
So if people love change as long as they can keep doing things the same way they always have been. How do you get people to change the way they've done things?
Well, it's you know, it's no different than in industry. I mean, you're going to have the same problems. You have programs, people in programs who have done things the way they've been doing them for years. Okay, many years. So we're trying to change that paradigm, and I think it goes back to, as I stated earlier, our training process. As I said within the NSA, at least from my office. Over the past couple of years, I spent $1 million a year on training. Okay, that's what I continue to do. And even during this year when we went through sequestration and we did the cuts and all that, yeah, it had to take some hit, but it didn't take the biggest hit in the program. I still provided funding to do training. So that's key, getting the folks trained. And as we begin to integrate security engineering into the everyday process of how we're doing development and stuff, we have to make sure that, as I stated earlier, you have to make sure that the security folks and the IT folks are beginning to become one cohesive unit working together. In NSA, we used to be split. We used to have a CIO, deputy CIO for cyber and a deputy CIO for IT. So we kept those kind of areas apart. Within the past 2 years, we changed that paradigm. We have merged the IT operations and the cyber operations together as the one unit. So they have one boss that they both report to. And I think that's allowed us to put some of the security requirements up front into the process instead of coming in to tail end. Have we solved it all the way across the board? No, we haven't. Let's just be honest about it. You still have program elements that function in their ways that they've done in the past. However, we do have the leadership, and when I say the leadership within NSA, I'm talking about at the highest level. We have the administrator and the principal deputy administrator are fully supportive of what we're trying to do in the IT arena. We have the CIO, the two CIOs are working real hard together to get these things done. So I think once you have the leadership working from a top-down instruction instead of we trying to do it always from the bottom up, but understanding that management is in support of the things that you're trying to do, it's easier to get through. It's not like cutting cake, but it is easier. Okay, so
Cutting cake's the easy thing, right?
that's correct.
You know, easy to cut cake. Any other questions, or I want to, somebody else? Let me have you peer into your crystal balls and look forward and tell me what we're going to be worrying about in 5 years, because you guys' crystal balls work better than mine does do whatever. What are we going to be worrying about?
I think you know, the two major areas that we're focused on now from a cyber perspective still are the protection of intellectual property, right? I mean, the innovations that are happening across industry in general, but how to, you know, keep that as a national asset. The innovation that we have that spawns business, that spawns economic development, that's one critical that I think isn't going to change over the next 5 years. The different types of threats, the different types of technologies are going to change, but that's going to still remain the key focus area. And the other one is the operational availability of those critical infrastructure systems, right? Things that run the stock market, that keep the power on, that keep the water flowing. I mean, those kinds of things are still going to be, it's a totally different landscape, it's a totally different threat, it's a totally different kind of technology, but those two things I think are going to still be the constants as the technology underneath them adapt.
I think in a lot of ways it's going to be the same thing we're worrying about today, and that is continuing to stay on as close to the cutting edge of technology as we can as a federal cooperative, or however you want to call that, to attract the high-end talent that's coming out of these, you know, schools and universities around the country without losing them to the other side, be that the commercial organizations or threat-based organizations where they think they can make some more money or do something more exciting than the bad connotation, I guess, but the suit and tie organization of the federal government where these kids want to be out there in shorts and t-shirts and on their mobile phone on the beach programming something. And then
Sounds good to me.
yeah, can program it's hard on a phone.
I think this is going to be something that's going to really begin to bother us, I would say, in the next 2.5 to 3 years, and that is application layer security. We talk about it every now and then. You hear somebody say, well, I got this great thing. You go take a look at it, and it's not what you're really looking for when you talk about application layer security. I think that we need to develop or begin to develop that set of individuals that really understand the application layers and how we protect those application layers for our critical infrastructure. I will submit to you today we don't have that, or do we have a good understanding of it? But I think that if we don't have that understanding in the next 2.5 to 3 years, we're going to really be in trouble.
So does that mean embracing enterprise architecture more? What does that actually mean?
I think enterprise architecture is a piece of that. I think that the more important piece of that in my mind is getting our cyber folks and our IT folks to better understand application layer itself, what it means when we really say application layer. And I'm not talking about the app that you work on every day. I'm talking about the application layer of my routers that are in place, right? Because when they break that, we're dead, okay? Now, there's some people say they've broken it already. Well, I haven't seen it. But I tell you what, if they ever break through it, we're completely had. And we don't understand it. Let's just be honest about it, folks. We need to understand it. At least I haven't seen anybody that has come to me and showed me they clearly understand it. I know there's been a couple of companies and vendors around that say they understand it, and then when you take a look at it, it's not really what you're looking for. Now, I'll pat Lawrence Livermore on the back. I know there's a young lady here that's from Lawrence Livermore. I've commissioned some work with them over the last 2 years, and something they showed me 2 weeks ago, they're pretty close. So, but I think that we really need to understand that better.
Paul? Crystal ball.
Well, I think the big part's the paradigm shift that I don't think we quite rounded the corner yet. I know the Secretary and Deputy Secretary are very interested in cybersecurity, which is a real blessing for the Department of Energy, but other federal organizations may not be as aware. They may table that out or delegate that out to another department. I think everybody understands that they all play a part in our cybersecurity role, but they don't understand what that part is. It goes back to the education and awareness. I mean, people still think that they're, hey, I'm a small fish in a big pond, so this one email is not that big of a deal, or you know, my work's so important that everybody needs to see what I'm doing, and I'll send it on out. And that's some huge paradigm shifts that we have to kind of get on board. But the way we do it is a lot more, is through transparency, through education, developing our workforce is a large part of that, but also being accountable ourselves before we're asking other people to be accountable as well, and how we're spending our money and what our tactic is on the big picture, maybe not the specifics of our programs, but where we're spending our money and why we're looking at those items and employing those risk management strategies, not just talking about them, but actually doing them in our day-to-day job.
Let me ask one last question of you two, and that's, I can't believe we went this long, but I didn't ask about, what does the budget mean to cyber? How does it impact how you guys actually get your job done?
Well, I mean, it's a program, got to have funding for it, right?
I heard that. Yeah. And there's less funding, so what does that mean about getting your job done? Cyber's done better than a lot of programs, but it's
true.
Less money.
But again, we kind of go and look at what we get and do the best we can. It's a risk management strategy on what our budget is to begin with. I mean, you can't spend 40% of the budget in cybersecurity. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So, but if you look at business practice in general, some companies may get away with 10% of their total budget going to cybersecurity, where others, because of the fidelity of the information, for instance, banking or in healthcare, they're going to have to be in that 25%. So we have to look at within DOE what programs need that sort of maybe not level split, but kind of you know, putting the money where the resources really need to be. For instance, over protecting the nuclear information as well. Whereas the science side, we still need to have security there. Who's coming? Who's going? Where's that information? But if we kind of got it separated out where we can make sure that the information there is maybe not as critical if it does get out, and plus there's no real gateway to get into the more protected information. So it's more about showing what we're doing with the money that we have and making those sound decisions. And I think the budget will take care of itself.
Wayne, what does the age of austerity mean for doing your job better?
I think that one of the things that we have to do better, and I think that we are starting to get cleared, the fine on what we want to do is how do we share the resources that we currently have for the cybersecurity program or the IT program to deliver the department what it needs to have for the department. And what that means is there are areas within the department that we can work together in certain things and share services and applications and products at a shared cost that will cut the cost for some of the programs that would allow us then to put those additional funds into our more critical areas. We, as a department, needs to sit down among ourselves and determine what those things are. JC3, for an example, it's Pete talked about earlier as one of the pillars. We need to implement JC3 in the department and get off the ball and say, okay, this is what JC3 means, and this is what JC3 is going to protect for the department. And these are the things that the programs are now responsible for protection that's not part of JC3, and figure out what that cost is to provide for the CIO office to provide those services to the rest of us in our environments. And then that will also allow us to take some of those savings that we have and put them back into the areas that we need to for the nuclear protection side of the house. So.
Awesome. Great discussion. I hope you'll join me in thanking